Hi guys, Vertus Education here with episode 33 of the Unreal Development Kit Beginner series, and in this episode I'm going to be going over camera animation and cinematics using Matinee. So having said that, we're going to be expanding on what we went over in the previous video where we touched up on making our very first Matinee script. So I'm going to try and give you a quick example here of some of the things we're going to be doing in today's episode, using camera actors, camera tracks, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to go ahead and press play to show you a quick camera fly through which I've actually made to demonstrate what we're going to be doing. So as you can see here, I've got a rather nice and complex camera track which pans through to different objects, goes around them in a certain way that I've predefined using keyframes. In addition to that, I've also using like focal points. For example, I can tell it to look at a specific object. For example, I wanted it to look up at the sun. When it goes in here, I might want it to go look at the center of the room. I'm going to make it go through the water, weaving through the little like platforms and so on and so forth that I've got here, which you'll see any second now. And I've also got a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, with this, we're actually going to be able to make cinematics and quick time events and anything else that you may want to work with when you're making camera stuff. So just keep in mind, camera stuff isn't necessarily just fly through things like this. It can be used for cinematics and so on and so forth. It's not just fly through, so if I go ahead and run up here, I can actually show you another example of some of the stuff that you can do with cameras and so on and so forth. So as I run up here, you'll actually see that I've got a camera which quickly pans to the generator as it's about to explode, and it actually shows that. So here you go. And bang, and after that it actually goes back and I'm back in control, so you can do things like quick time events and so on and so forth, which is pretty cool, and we'll be doing that in today's episode. So let's start off by actually taking a quick look at the setup for some of these animated camera sequences that I have. Now, I've actually got quite a fair bit of Kismet script in the level now, and I've actually organized it to make it a little easier. So let's take a look at this generator explosion sequence that I have here. So at the very top you can see I've got something called a director group. This essentially allows me to change the camera from the default player controller to the camera actor which I place in the scene, which I will show you any second now. You can see we've got one camera actor here, and I believe there's also another camera actor over here, and this one here being dedicated to the fly through. And if I go ahead and play this, you can see that I've actually got a camera here with different keyframes, and each one they move, and I can tell it to go to different ones based on that. So the first one is back a bit, and then the second one's a little bit forwards. So I've actually kind of managed to screw this over, but I'm going to show you a better example of that with the fly through sequence that I have here. Here you can see I've got loads and loads and loads of different keyframes at different times here to move my camera sequence. So if I go ahead and move over here, you can actually see I've got some sort of purple stuff going all around my level here, and that is actually the camera track which the camera will move on, and that's generated from the different keyframes that I've got in my scene. So if I go ahead and do this, if I go ahead and start this, you can see it's actually following that along. So I'm just going to go ahead and press play, and you can see it's moving along this track here and just following it, and there's also little dots or something in that track, and this is essentially just the keyframes which I've actually put into it, and we're going to be doing that ourselves. So just quickly take a look at the sequence again before we go into anything. We've got our different keyframes. Each of these are different locations, and essentially UDK generates that camera track based on the first keyframe, the next one, then the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. So if the first one is over here and the next one's a little bit forwards, in between that time it's just going to be moving that camera actor that we have. So keep in mind you can do tons and tons of other stuff with this camera groups as well. So for example, I can create a particle group to go along with this, a movement group or something to highlight such a thing like a cinematic or a quick time event or an enemy dying, something like that. So let's just go ahead and stop with all the rambling and actually get into creating our very first camera animation. So for the sake of this, I'm going to try and create a quick camera animation to highlight that this pipe here is exploding, which we made in the previous episode. So to start off, I'm actually going to need a camera actor. To go ahead and get one of these, all you need to do is go into your content browser, go to actor classes, and under common you'll find camera actor. Just go ahead and drag and drop that into your scene, and then just move it along to the first location of your cinematic. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have it up a little bit, and it's actually going to be looking at the player to start with, just as he goes ahead and touches the trigger that we have over here, which actually starts it off. Now keep in mind, it's actually rather difficult to move these along just manually, so we've got a little trick that we can actually do to make these move along easier. So rather than just using the transformation tools, we can actually fly around and lock the actor to the screen and then let go wherever we want it to get a more precise view of where we're going to place it. And we're actually going to use this little thing up here which says lock selected actors to camera. So if I go ahead and press that, start moving, you'll see that it has indeed disappeared and is actually at the camera. So if I go ahead and start to look at this trigger and then uncheck it and then move away, you will see it is then pointing right down where that is, which is pretty cool. So now that we have our camera actor in place and ready to do this, we're going to go ahead and open up Kismet and create a new Matinee sequence dedicated to this. So all you got to do is just right click anywhere where you have some space with the camera actor selected and press new Matinee. Double click it, open it up, and then right click in here and add a new camera group, which is pretty self-explanatory. And I'm just going to call this pipe pan, because we're essentially just going to make the camera pan towards the pipe which explodes. So over here we have two different tracks. The first one being the movement track, which essentially allows us to make the different keyframes for different positions of the camera, and the second one is the FOV angle. Now you may want to play around with FOV angle in some instances, however I'm not necessarily going to be touching up on it at the moment, as you won't really be using it on some of the beginner stuff. So let's just get in here and take a look at the movement track. So you can actually see that we've got our very first keyframe here, which is indeed the start position of the camera. Now we're going to need to make a new one of these, which actually is at the next location. So all I'm going to do to make a new one is press enter, and then it should be in there, and then we can just press control and then click it and then just drag it along to the time that we want that point the camera to reach it at. So at the moment we've just got a camera actor which moves to the same location, so we actually need to move this along. So just go ahead and click it, and when it says adjust key movement 1, we're going to go ahead and move it. So I'm going to make sure I have lock selected actors to camera, and then I'm going to move it up to the second point, stop that, and then I'm going to open up our little Matinee sequence here again, and then I'm just going to click anywhere to stop adjusting it, move back, and it should be in place. And you can actually see we've got this little yellow track here which has been generated. So if I go ahead and press back, press play, you can actually see that our camera begins to move, and this is just the basics of creating a camera animation. If you so wanted to, you could create another keyframe here. For example, if I go ahead and move this to 2 seconds, I can then move it again, and I can make it face these rocks over here and this bush and so on and so forth. So I'm going to quickly do this, and I'm going to click here, and we can actually see that is what is going to happen. Now this is kind of how you construct your very first camera track. So let's just go ahead and take a look at what we've created so far. So you can see the camera moves, and then it moves to the first location and then moves to the second one, and this is all in order. So it gets to the first location at 1 second, and then the second location at the second setting, and the transition will be between the two different key points that we have here. So I'm just going to quickly go ahead and delete this, and we're actually going to create the system which actually allows us to switch the camera from the default player controller to the camera animation that we've got here. So over here in our camera group, we've got a little icon here that looks like a little camera. You might want to go ahead and just make sure that's yellow, and we can actually see exactly what our camera is seeing. Now you may want to do this just to make sure that your positioning is correct and everything. So for example, if you wanted to highlight something, you might want to make sure it is on the camera exactly, it's not clipping through anything or anything like that. So let's just quickly click this and press play and see what we can see. So let's go ahead and do it. And you can see there it moves pretty nicely, and this is a good preview of what the player will see. Now we need to actually set it up so the camera will actually change from the default camera to this. To do this, just go ahead and add a new director group. Now with this, with the director track selected, just press enter and then choose the camera group which you want it to switch to. Pretty simple really, and you'll get this little colored bar, and you can add numerous of these if need be. For example, if you want to switch between numerous camera actors in your scene. So let's just go ahead and open up Kismet, and then we're going to hook this up to an event after I've disabled this, and then we're going to go ahead and try it out. So let's just go ahead and create a new event using this touch, and let's press play, and then let's go ahead and try it out. So let's just go ahead and click it and see what happens. And there we go, you can see that it switches to our cinematic camera here, and then it lets go of it as soon as the event is finished. Now keep in mind it didn't switch back immediately, so we need to play around with that. So in Matinee you actually have a start point and an end point of the track. Now this is actually ending a few seconds after the camera has finished moving, so we need to adjust this little line here. So just select the end of this little red thing here and drag it to the end, and equally this is the end bit, and then we have the beginning piece which is just here. So just play around with that and make sure you've got the right length, and hopefully it should be ready. Also keep in mind, make sure you don't make that too short, otherwise you will get to a problem where it's not playing the entire camera action. So I'm just going to go ahead and press play here and hope for it to work. So let's run up to it. It goes bang, and then immediately it goes back, and that's pretty much how we do it. So the next thing I'm going to do is quickly show you some more advanced camera fly-through stuff, because we haven't really done too much. All we've got is 2 keyframes. So having said that, I'm going to adjust the total length of this that we're allowed to use. And when we've done that, we're going to actually add some additional keyframes to show that you can add all manners of complexity to this. So let's just go ahead and do this. I'm going to press enter, make a new keyframe, and this one is going to move back to the door. This one is going to go through the door, and it's going to go into this room here. And then the next one is going to go further through the room. And then the next one is actually going to fly through the wall and into the main room that we have here. And then the last one, actually no, not the last one, is going to get closer, and the last one is going to finish facing down towards the water. Now you can actually see that I did that really quickly, because I just kept lock selected actors on, and I just selected a new keyframe each time. I didn't move, just to make sure it stayed in the same position. So you may actually want to play around with that and see how fast you can actually do this stuff, as it's really beneficial to create these tracks easily rather than just doing it really slow. Now I can do this incredibly quickly, and most people can't, so just see what you can do and have fun with it. So I'm just going to have one quick review of what we've got here. So I'm going to press stop, and I'm going to press play, and we're going to have a look at what we've got. See, it goes through this corridor, clips through the wall, goes in here, and then ends up facing down towards the water. And if we go ahead and press play, when we're outside of here, it's actually going to play that entire track. And see what we can do. and because we changed the endpoint, it's now slightly longer, and we can go through the entire track, and we have a nice, lovely, longer cinematic. Now, make sure you do play around with more advanced cinematics. So for example, we have breakpoints, certain actions happen in it. For example, I've got the particle systems going off. You might want to start animating some stuff. You might want to do all manners of crazy stuff, like quick time events where the player's got to do some kind of input before the next action happens, and so on and so forth. So thanks for watching. Comment, like, and subscribe. Don't forget to create some more camera animations, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.